And welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
As a very special, famous Starfleet captain once said, to which another famous starship captain once said, actually 100 years earlier, wherever our mission takes us today, we'll try to have a little fun along the way too.
Hello, everyone. I am psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. One of us is a real doctor.
And we'll leave it to you to decide who that might be. Today on Life Support Live, episode 27.
I was going to say
Life
the number
Support.
if you didn't, but you did. So
After last week and how we sort of missed our magical 25, I was like, Larry, we need to actually announce this stuff because apparently we forget about it all the time. On episode 27, we're talking about confusion and disorientation.
Wait, what? We are?
I'm not sure. I'm a little not sure, but I think so. I think so.
Okay. That was a non-laugh. Okay, go.
Well, I got a little giggle out of it. So, folks, let us know in the comments, what's your favorite episode of relating to a character where, they're not sure what's going on, or things don't quite make sense, or things don't quite add up, or there's a lot of disorientation of what's actually happening.
Isn't that episode 2020?
That's good, Larry. I like that one.
Yeah,
that one. Yeah, this is the welcome to the season finale of humanity, which is this year. So, Larry, we've got a few things to go through, but first, before we go to some of our announcements, let's talk about Life Support Live. If this is the first time people are here, what the heck is this? What is this place?
Well, I think this is funny because Life Support Live grew out of a panel that was canceled for WonderCon, which you'll hear in a minute is going to be a panel after all come Monday.
Yeah.
But here every week on Saturday, we are going boldly through uncertain times. We geek out on Star Trek and send you home with hopefully a little bit of some pointers, some daily tips to get through. Yeah, episode 2020, this crazy stuff. We geek out on Star Trek. But hopefully in a healthy way. And I like to think there's no other. I had someone tell me that they thought there were some other shows, but I'd like to think there's nothing like it on the net. So I'm thrilled for all of our community we have going now. And if you're a first timer, welcome. You can jump in the chat. You see Ali is madly putting some of our chat folks up. You can even, for right now anyway, still, if you want to, come in and Skype with us. I know, Skype, a thing. Yes. Blame it on Ecamm, one of our production tools. But anyway, you can join us face-to-face later on in the show. This show actually has some structure, folks. We actually do several things. I'll let the real doctor tell you about that, though. But thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for being here.
Especially if you're here from Virtual TrekCon. If anybody heard about this through Virtual TrekCon, welcome. Let us know that in the chat, too.
So, folks, Life Support Live, we have 4 different segments on the show where we do a briefing room where we do a deep dive into Star Trek canon, and we're always focusing the theme of every episode of Life Support Live around something that we might all be experiencing right now in the strange time that is 2020. After that, we dive into the counselor's log. This is where I do a little bit deeper dive into the science behind what we're experiencing. Throw it over to Larry with the K3 factor, which is always a fun deep dive into some aspect of the canon that you might not already be aware of, like maybe the 3K factor, the K3 factor itself. I didn't know about that until we started doing this show. And last but not least, we do an away mission where I might give you a very specific skill that you can use to apply to your life this week. And then we open up the hailing frequencies and just have a fun time with the comments, and then maybe sometimes a little bit of a call in as well. So Larry, before we get to all that, we got a little bit of housekeeping to clean up.
Yes. We have more to do than just announce the episode number.
Yes, yeah, we do. So let's start off with our community guidelines. So last week's episode was about rules. Little do we know that would lead us to create some own rules of ourselves.
I didn't realize that. Yes.
Rules, when to follow them and when not. Little do we know that we would realize that we would need to create some own rules of ourselves. So, Larry, we
easier to follow the rules if there are some to know, or not. If there are some to follow or not. Yes.
Yeah, rules, when to follow, when to break. Also, like, you got to have them. Otherwise, you can't do either. So, Larry, we created this show in haste. Back in May, did we launch? Did we launch in April or May? I think we launched in May.
I was thinking it was late April, but yes, anyway.
It might have been later. I think April 20th actually sounds right. I remember your voice in the trailer saying, on April 20th,
okay.
Blah, blah, blah. I think it was then, and we launched it in haste, trying to put together all the stuff as our worlds were going in weird directions that we weren't aware of. So we never put together any type of
webcam. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I remember that. How do we do this? How do we do a live show?
I need one of these. Help me out.
Yeah. That was a fun time. Our audio was always out of sync. There was a lot to learn. But we
2009
were just trying to...
iMac. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember that. Larry resetting his computer 20 minutes later, maybe might be ready to go.
Yes.
It was we were just trying to get the show up as soon as we could with the limited knowledge and experience that we had doing a live show like this. Two people, none of us had ever done a two-person live stream before. There was a lot to figure out. Mm-hmm. We never, in that rush to get this community going, we never created any guidelines for the community. And we realized over time, especially after last week, that has caused problems because this is a unique show. This is not, we're not here, folks, to just debate Star Trek. We mentioned that from the get-go, Larry. Yeah, this is not, I remember you mentioning this in our very first episode. This is not about what show is better or worse.
If I'm going to pile on the pile that is the internet now, especially the Star Trek internet, and I've said this famously with Trek Files, I say this on Tuesdays Live, I'm not going to do any more same old. If I'm going to be a part of something, it needs to be adding something fresh and new. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, we're pioneering something. I think. But yes, we did. When we started this, also we said it's for. I kept trying to add some comfort across all the interwebs in Star Trek world. I said, I like going back to an old World War II term, which was for the duration. Like, how long are we going to be in this lockdown? For the duration. It's like as long as it takes. And we started this show for the duration, not knowing how long it would go. I started another show that was wonderful. I loved it. It had a great community. But after about 20 episodes, I said, we need to stop this, and I need to rejigger this and figure out what I'm going to do for the future. It was great. This show, we had some moments there where we thought, can we keep this going with our lives and the world going? And I'm glad that we figured out a way to make it keep going. And I think we've got a community that's growing that's glad too. I want to bring it to more people. We're going to be doing that. We have plans already to do that. But we had to take a step back and have the foundation be as strong as we could. And that includes our community. And that's why we're doing what we're doing now.
We just posted the community guidelines that we all created together. So that's in the comments section. You can check that out. It's also on our Facebook group page. If you go to facebook.com/lifesupportlive, you'll see them there too.
We created page.
Our Facebook
yes,
page.
Please go if you're not there already. Yes, and join it.
So Larry and I put our heads together. We came up with a list that we thought really is true to this show and makes this a safe place. We then turned it over to the community and got your feedback. We got some great notes from you all about how to improve it. And so those are the community guidelines right over there. We also recruited a few people to be our moderators. So we didn't really The challenge of doing a live show is it's hard for Larry and I to moderate because we're trying to keep this whole thing going, and it's hard to always be right
I'm
there
behind
with the.
in the chat always,
Yeah,
much less
yeah.
on top of it. So yes.
Larry tries to work from the top down, and I'm trying to work from the bottom up to keep up with all the comments. But it's hard to be there and really make sure that we're sticking to community guidelines. So we have a few moderators who are going to be helping us out. We're hoping to get some more as time goes on, but we're hoping to make this place very safe. Make it feel productive, make it feel like you all are getting what you signed up for, which is a deep dive into Star Trek canon that is fun, related to where we're going, and some helpful tips that help you to apply this, and for this to be a fun, supportive space. That's our goal over here.
And for our veteran community, you know that already. I mean, I think people get that vibe anyway. We just needed to make some get some guardrails down. And if you're new with us this week, and they're like, when are they going to talk about the Trek? When are they going to talk about mental health? We're getting there, but this is so welcome if you are new. Just know that it's a fun place. We got a fun group. You'll see that the chat is full of great people, and we're just making sure that we keep it fun for everybody.
Yep. And speaking of keeping it fun for everyone, that also gets to our second announcement, which is we have a new season to talk about, and this is
it's a real retreat. No,
not the retreat yet. I'm sure Jared has this week's location for us ready to go. We are talking about Star Trek Discovery now. We have a new season of Star Trek Discovery, and we are going to do what we did with Lower Decks. We take this week's new episode of Star Trek and use that as the inspiration for the topic of this week. And we turned it back to you in terms of how deep do you want us to get in spoilers. With Lower Decks, we didn't cover any... Oh, there you go. Larry, were you invited to the premiere event? Were you at the virtual premiere?
But my swag box got lost in the mail, so I only got the cheapo swag thing, which was this cardboard.
I'm very jealous. That means Larry's seen more episodes than us. But the life support live spoiler policy for Star Trek Discovery, we wanted to get your votes on that, and we did. And the consensus seems to be, or the majority of people are recommending we can talk about a little bit of details, but not give away this week's episode. So that's what we're going to do. We were a bit more conservative with Lower Decks because the whole world didn't have access to Lower Decks, and so we tried not to mention anything. I know it's coming, folks. It's blame the coronavirus. But with Star Trek Discovery, it is available globally on Netflix, largely for most of the world. So we'll share little details, but we won't give away the episode. And we'll only share really details as it's related to our topic. So that is the Star Trek Discovery spoiler policy. Thank you for your help in that. Larry, we got two more announcements, and they're both tied to each other. So tell us about Virtual TrekCon.
So Virtual TrekCon, we're going to put this up front, this is the second edition. In the year of the canceled cons, a lot of people are doing virtual events. You all know that. Ryan and Sirach and the gang at the Seventh Rule podcast put together a virtual TrekCon in June, July, when things were in baby steps. Another event that I was part of called Connected Community Con, that was Jalea and Jay, the great people that do the chip-activated triples at Science Division. I'll give them a plug all day long, and we did a triple event last weekend. They came up with the concept, I think for the first time, of a virtual dealer's room. And now Virtual TrekCon in their second edition has adapted that too, except it's like over a 5-day period, we've had a 90-minute window to sit at a virtual booth in a Zoom room. So I've been doing a Trekland, two things, guys. I've been doing a Trekland virtual booth. I'm up bright and early at 8 a.m. here before the show, because I was at my booth then. You can go to my page, but we've got a graphic here for it. My booth is going to be going Sunday and Monday afternoon, but look on the right there. Ali and I said we've come full circle. Our panel format is actually, although it was going to be focused on Picard only, but our panel is going to finally see the light of day-ish. We're doing a panel at 8:45 a.m. Pacific, 11:45 a.m. Eastern. They fixed the graphic. If you were on the site and it said PM, and no, it's AM. So yeah, 11:45 Eastern, which means you can get it in the late afternoon in Europe and in the continent too. But we're going to do a hits and misses kind of panel format version of the show. But we'll have live chat then because we're doing it on a dedicated. Here's the other thing, guys. It will not be on our normal channels. It's on a special YouTube live link. So go to the virtual TrekCon. We can put it. If I was smart, I would put it in the chat here. Maybe somebody will do it for us.
I'm looking for it. Yeah, I'm looking for it.
Oh, now we're doing it. Yeah. Anyway, it's on a special chat. It's on a special YouTube place, but there'll be live chat on live YouTube. So hopefully, and I know that's early in the morning on a weekday for a lot of you in the States, but it is late afternoon in Europe, and that's the slot they gave us. So, and we had and yes, 8:45 is a weird time. Apparently, the geeks who love sports don't know how to do a timer when they pre-record a panel, and they went long on their hour, and we couldn't move to the rest of the day, so we're going at 8:45, not 9 a.m. So anyway, maybe a lot of you can join us for that, and I'm sure it'll be recorded with all the other virtual TrekCon things being recorded too. If not, we'll record it. But we wanted to make sure that you all knew that we'll have another dose of this, and it'll be compressed. We're calling it hits and misses. So we're going to do some top. What we got? We've got 3, 3, and 3. I think we have 9 topics we're going to go to. But we're going to make sure, and we've advertised it as our chat room is our third panelist, since we didn't want to, complicate the frame any more than we already do. So yeah, and we'll have a special frame and everything. It's Ollie's working on a custom look for the panel. But hopefully some of you can join us then, or look for that later. But that's Monday at 8:45 Pacific, 11:45 Eastern, 5:45 and 6:45 across Europe. So we're excited about that.
I'm putting the link to that panel in the chat right now. There it goes. And so you can actually watch, or you can save that video link right now. We'll have it, we'll share it again before that panel goes live. But I think you all will like it. It's going to be sort of, think of it as the best of Life Support Live to date. We're going to take the biggest and best ideas that have come from this whole community. And because of that...
Pressure.
I know. But be ready, Larry, bright and early Monday morning. So there's a link again for virtual TrekCon 2.
And while you got that up, and while you got that up again, guys, come chat with me at 5 on Sunday Pacific, 8 Eastern, 1 a.m. British, and 6:30 Monday night. After we do that morning, I will still have one more day of my virtual booth that evening. So if you can come by, please do. It's a custom. You have to go to the page. There's a custom link for my booth. Maybe if I'm smart, I'll post it over here too. We're a little wary of the Zoom bombing. I got Zoom bombed. We got Zoom bombed at the Tribbles event. I finally, after 6 months, but we handled it. So anyway.
Well, I hope you beamed over a lot of Tribbles to those Klingons. That
was no trouble at all. Yeah.
Were there any tribulations as a result of that conflict, Larry?
Actually, no. We all just smoothly sailed. We just boldly went through very calm waters. But
man, well, it has been it's been a long road getting from there to here, Larry. We have one more announcement. We have one more announcement. Thanks for being patient with us, folks. Since Larry and I have been so busy with everything this week related to virtual TrekCon, getting these community guidelines going, all that sort of stuff, we had to delay our Star Trek First Contact slumber party, our watch event. We'll have an announcement of the date for that next week. So we'll be announcing a date sometime next week. We just wanted to do it in a way that it's actually going to be fun for all of us. And if we tried to pull it off this last week, it would not have been fun for Larry and I, because our schedules were really...
maybe it's because I was being confused and disoriented by other things happening, but I never thought that... somehow a lot of people got the idea we were having it like the next day or in a couple of days, and that was not where we were. And I didn't want to compete with virtual TrekCon this weekend and all of that. So... There's plenty of subspace out there for us to occupy, at least before the burn happens anyway. So
well, speaking of Larry, We are done with our announcements. Finally, the longest lead-in ever to a life support live show. Thank you, folks. We got so many great episode examples in the comments section.
Yes.
We're going to dive into all of this stuff in one moment. But with that, Larry, let's walk into the briefing room. We have new Star Trek to talk about, new live-action Star Trek. Larry, Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 1. It just came out this week. And a lot of the things I think we want to dive into a little bit are all in the commercial, actually, for this episode.
Yeah.
So in terms of spoilers, I don't think we're going to be really...
In Hollywood, we call it a trailer.
The trailer to the season. Thank you, Larry. Not the commercial break. Yes. So Larry, we find ourselves in the 32nd century. There has been a cataclysmic event known as the Burn. The Federation, rest in peace, is not quite there. And we find Michael Burnham is confused and disoriented and trying to understand what's going on. Larry, your initial non-big spoiler thoughts about Star Trek Discovery and this bold new this bold new, it felt like a feature film, the cinematography, this bold new future we find ourselves in. Your initial thoughts here?
I will just tell everybody that they showed us 2 episodes at the premiere, the digital party premiere. That was an invite thing only, and both of them, they're different tones. People that watched the first hour and said, "Where is everybody?" Hang on, I think the promo at the end of that showed everybody is still there. But for the last year and a half, and if you're in my Trekland circles, if you're in Portal 47, if you watch my Tuesday show, I've been talking for a year and a half. I mean, it's funny because they filmed this over a year ago. COVID slowed, as we all know, the Clovid. It's a city in New Mexico. Clovis, COVID.
I think that's where the retreat is happeing. Jared can fact check me.
Yes, Jared. The next retreat's in Clovid, New Mexico. No, it's been. We've seen. They've been teasing this since like a year ago at New York Comic Con 2019. Yeah. So we've seen the taste, but basically it's, as shows evolve, the first year's delivery was like, a cluster F. I mean, just because of the way it came out. The second season was much more settled. When they made the big leap to make this time break, I just inherently knew, some people can be cynical and say they're doing it so they don't have to follow canon. Actually, au contraire, canon is all in their rearview window, but really for the first time, if they want to be this audacious kind of attitude on Star Trek, they're finally where they have the elbow room to do that, I think. And really what I thought for ages was that Discovery may finally, I keep using this phrase, I think Discovery is finally going to be comfortable in its own skin. Mm-hmm. I think Discovery is finally in the waters that it was meant to be in, because I don't think it knew what it was actually going to wind up being when it was launched. Picard had a lovely, you may have critiques to make about Picard, but it was kind of born fully formed. Lower Decks has been awesome. I think Lower Decks I said last week, was the most fully formed ever Star Trek. Strange New Worlds, I think, is going to be the same way. And Section 31. Discovery's been the learning curve show. I think Season 3 is finally there. And Tunde, Awesome Sami Tunde was that producer with the wonderful African name, whose nickname is Tunde because of that very reason. He's done a wonderful job directing. He wound up doing the first 2, so it's really kind of a 2-part pilot again. But if you saw that, it's got scale and epic, and not just because they went to Iceland to film.
But Cairo said I'm sure an Iceland retreat is in order for this episode. I have to say,
waterfall. But anyway, that's my hot take. So everybody, if you saw it and you're wondering where the crew is, you saw in the trailer they're coming. And still, I will say always that I reserve the right to critique anything modern, just as the way I will go back and critique anything that's beloved from the past. But I think they've finally hit their stride, and I think they're finally in a good place to tell an awesome story. And I've seen a lot of people be excited who may not have been. I think Lower Decks has been a good lead-in for kind of getting people are being able to see more and more flavors at the buffet. And I think now we're having a buffet, a new flavor at even the Discovery buffet in the buffet room of Trek.
Linda says, "OMG, the scenery," and I have to say one of the great joys for me of watching this episode was just being taken away to a very different place, and I'm sure for those. For those members of our community who might have spent some time in Iceland, maybe didn't feel such a otherworldly place watching this video or watching this episode. But for me, Larry, I had so much. It was such a great mental health moment for me to watch watch Star Trek, watch this new episode, this new season, to be in this very new place, to be in this new time era. It just, for that 1 hour I was watching that show, it really just took me away. It took me away from the stressors of the day because I could just sort of pour myself into this. And my only criticism of Lower Decks really is that the episodes are too short. I wish they were longer. I wish we had more. I wish we had more Lower Decks. And so it was nice for just like an hour.
Oh, fine.
To really...
There's another 2 years of prep. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It might be a while before we get some more.
If you want so it'll be 2032 before you get that.
I really enjoyed this this introduction to this brand new part of the timeline, and I love seeing all the new tech. That's always something that's a lot of fun for me. So there's this projectile matter, or I don't know what the technical term is, but it's a whole new way of organizing matter and controls and furniture and all of that sort of stuff. So I had a lot of fun with this episode. If anyone is wavering on whether or not to dive into it, I say give Discovery another shot if you've written it off. I think this is a fun new introduction. But getting to our theme here, something that's playing out in this episode is confusion, is disorientation.
Right.
Michael Burnham.
930 years worth, basically.
Yes. I mean, I can't even imagine going back about 1,000 years and I don't even know what would be happening in. But
it would,
world.
Even as crazy and alien to you as that would be, it's not the same because that's at least hindsight. Even if you weren't a history major, you would at least have a vague feeling, and you would go. You had the power. You said, "I'm going back 1,000." Now, if you go back. Like the best time travel episodes, it takes everybody in Starfleet. There's a swastika. It's World War II. Oh, there's guys in a bread line. It's the Depression in New York City. Right. I mean, they have a clue even when they're disoriented from being time travelers. But she's in the future, which is you've got nothing to hang on to. You're totally disoriented because you've got nothing to, you've got no option set to look at. So that's my only problem with your analogy there.
Right. Scott's fact-checked me here. It's programmable matter. Thank you, Scott.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. There's so much new tech, like the portable transporters. So much new tech to get used to here. We find Michael Burnham in a very confused state. So trying to figure out where is she, what has happened, where are her people. She's trying to connect with the things she knows, but everything she knows has been upended in some way. Like when she hears about the burn, when the universe took this hard left, right? When there was this cataclysmic event that has changed the nature.
She's not even on the planet that she thought she was going to be at, that she at least had a glimpse of 930 years ago. She's not even where she thought she would, which was going to be confusing enough.
Yeah, space and time has been completely disrupted for her, and there is a big tie-in here, Larry, to what we've all been going through. As you and I started to talk about this episode, we started to realize, wow, this was not planned. This episode was written well before the pandemic. Right. It was shot well before the pandemic.
They shot like April and May last year. 2019. Last year. Yes. Yeah. Like a year and a half ago, this was filmed.
So the feeling of what is happening, what do I do, how to get connected to trustworthy information, seeing everything around you rapidly changing. I mean, that has been our experience for so many of us in 2020. There are, early on in this pandemic, there were reports of people who are at sea, people who are camping, people who had purposely disconnected themselves from this stuff because they were enjoying their time away, and then coming back to society and learning of the pandemic, learning that everything is closed, learning that people are sheltering in place, seeing people dressed very differently, all this sort of stuff, in much the same way that Michael Burnham experienced in this episode. But all of us have been trying to understand what is happening, and how do I get information? How do I get trustworthy information? How do I figure out what to do? How do I connect? That confusion in a time of crisis is something we've all experienced this year.
Well, you were saying that it wasn't quite at the moment, but the Star Trek cruise, the big licensed official cruise, set sail. La-di-da, there's a weird thing happening in China, and by the time they came back, like 10 days later or whatever it was, they were getting off. And the last couple of days I was praying that, cruise ships are dicey enough sometimes if some virus gets out of control. But if somebody somehow was incubating the COVID-19, I was like, oh, please don't have the Star Trek cruise be the butt of the late night jokes before things even got deadly. Because in the beginning, it was still kind of, oh, there's this wacky thing happening. And, it very quickly got where it wouldn't have been funny. But about the time they came back and got off the ship, all the protocols were starting to there was confusion, but there had been nothing before. And now there was at least confusion about what we should do and not do, and people arguing even early on. And that's when they got back. So I talked to people who were on it, and they were aware of things unfolding, but there was still confusion then. But it was not status quo at all the way it was when they left. And that was just over that week, 10 days.
Right. Triangulum on YouTube says, I found myself in a very similar state as Burnham, waiting for the pieces to come together. And Cairo also says, Michael scream when she realizes there's life is awesome. I will scream like Michael when I hear the news that we can go to events safely again. Yeah, Cairo, my wife and I often... we sometimes like to talk about what's the big thing we're going to do when it's safe to be in crowds again, in big scale crowds. And she really wants to go to she wants to go to Disneyland and just do a big trip with our close friends. I really want to go to a big concert. I really love music, Larry. I would love to go to a big concert and have a big experience, just a big communal event. I think that would be I don't know.
Fun. I just want the luxury. I like that phrase, scream like Michael. Is that going to be a new Trek phrase?
Let's go with it. We could do that. Yes.
I'm just wondering if, the way we see, and we've had these right now in California, we've had this has been so politicized, which is unfortunate. But what's maddening and confusing, and it just shows how sad this should not be politicized at all. But even if you ripped away the political layer, we've got people, states, governors, who are trying to do things by the book, by the best known practices, and I think that's what California has done. Now you've got people still privately, unless you've got the police running around, arresting people for not masking. We've got people still, civilly disobeying. But even in the places where they've had the rules in place and tried to go by the book and clamp down, and the population goes along, months go by, there are criteria in place, people try to follow the criteria to come back by the book, and you start to have a spike again. And the people who are trying to do the right thing in leadership, we're having that in California. It's starting to spike. I was just listening to that last night, and now they're looking at maybe going back to a more severe lockdown. And as anybody doing anything knows, it's like, when you get a prescription for an antibiotic, and hopefully it's been wisely prescribed in the right dose, but the whole thing is like, sometimes they'll advise you, take it for 2 weeks. After 4 or 5 days, you'll feel better, but don't stop taking it, because if you don't, you allow I forget the word for it, but you allow the bug to come back stronger because you don't kill it all the way.
Right.
And I've been worried about this. Some of it's been conscious, some of it's been unconscious, some of it's just been well-intentioned, but we're learning still. And if we've done things halfway instead of, all the way, if we let this come roaring back because we didn't kill it, even by people who are trying to follow the best guidance of the time. Anyway, it's totally confusing and disorienting. My thing
Yeah.
is, when we do come out of it and we get to have our joyous trips to Disneyland or wherever, will that be a switch that's flipped all at once? I'm going to push the button and we're all reopened, or will it be a gradual? I mean, I would love to have a Michael screaming moment, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking it may be a gradual re-easing. But I still want to have a Michael scream moment, like you.
I think this gets back to this episode. So, Michael is trying to find some connection to her crew.
Answer my question. I have answers. Answer my questions.
We find her when she starts off in this state of complete alone and isolation. And she finds Book, but Book doesn't seem to be that helpful in the moment. I think, Larry, it's going to be like a moment we actually see in the end of this episode, and I'm not going to spoil it, but it does tie in to this right here. What I am wearing, the Federation, at least the symbol of the Federation.
That's been promoted for 9 months.
I know. She finds some connection to the Federation, and while it's familiar, it's also very alien. And that confusion and disorientation is something I think that we are going to carry with us as the reconstruction happens. Once we have some type of control over this pandemic. Some things are never going to go back to the way they were. I was just thinking the other night about birthday cakes. In the United States, we have this custom of blowing the candles out on your birthday cake. Well, so many of us now know about all the aerosols, that are released. We also know that we can oftentimes be contagious with the virus.
Yeah.
Right. Have some aerosol. Yum!
Or some aerosol icing, I should say. Yeah.
I prefer cellular peptide cake. What was it? What is it that Worf eats? The Troy cake?
Cellular peptide cake with,
mint frosting.
Mint frosting.
Talk about disorienting. I think that's one of our episodes on the list. When we do go back to our social activities, they're not going to be the same. And my wife and I were talking about how we probably aren't going to blow out the candles on cakes quite so much. I think a good compromise is you put the candle on the person's piece and just have them blow out their own piece.
Wow, you've done some deep thinking about this. You're way ahead of me.
Well,
spare time. Look at you, boy.
My daughter likes to pretend every other day is someone's birthday, and she likes to blow out cakes. And so we were like, my wife and I turned to each other. We're like, I don't think we're going to be doing that. I think we're done with that. So how do
public spitting on sidewalks for the Spanish flu pandemic? That's gone.
Right. I think handshakes are going to be changed, and I think there's going to be a new culture of as it relates to sick days. And if you are sick, even if it's a common cold, maybe you'll be wearing a mask. I think some stuff's going to be very different for the better.
Or being forced to work when you're sick. Just that whole attitude.
Yeah, let's get rid of that. That's
public laws
in
about
many
that
ways.
kind of thing. Yeah.
So it's going to be very hard to predict, which we see with Michael Burnham. It's very hard for her to predict what the heck is happening in this 32nd century. So Larry, with that, let's dive into some more examples in Star Trek. We've got so many great examples in the comments. You and I outlined a few of ours ourselves. As we'd like to do, can we start with the original series? And see if there's some great examples here of confusion and disorientation.
I said something the other day about the whole damn third season could be that way, for better or for worse. And I pulled one out, but I've seen several going by here. But I mean, guys, let's just admit right up front that it's TV, it's entertainment, it's a plot, it's drama. We talk about the serialized shows being nothing but surprise reveals for confusion, but even in a 1-hour episode or a half hour, the show depends on somebody being confused because there's a puzzle to figure out.
Yes.
So Yes, we know
Yes.
there's confusion, but sometimes it's like extreme disorientation is
Yeah.
and confusion is part of the project. So right. Um, very cute, Libby. Everybody's been on fire. By the way, guys, I'm trying not to be so far behind in the chat while Ollie is talking. I'm ignoring everything he says while I'm trying to keep up with you guys. Oh, did I say that
Please,
out
Larry,
loud?
you always have. I always give you permission to ignore me if it's for our community.
It,
Yes.
well, it tried to be, and everybody has been flying by here with great titles. The one I just pulled, and I thought of several, but the one you've
Yes.
got there is the one I think is like one of the most disorienting. Which is it's another yes, stupid goofy reason. But the Mark of Gideon, when Kirk is wondering where his crew went and he's totally disoriented, and then he sees this girl in '60s, see-through gauze dancing around like a out-of-work ballet dancer or something. Um, and of course, it's all a ruse because it's a fake ship and they're not really gone. But it's one of the longest times I think of seeing Kirk be disoriented and confused. In the original series. And there's a lot of I thought of Spectre of the Gun when they're all trying to figure out they all know they've been planted here, but it's like what's the way out of the puzzle? But again, it's like the puzzle of the plot is what all our characters are. But sometimes it's just a very human puzzle. Sometimes it's an alien adversary puzzle or a weird science puzzle. It's when it's like it feels like it's a human moment and you can be humanly disoriented like what? That's what I'm thinking about here, and not to put a straddle on rein in what everybody's popping up with here in the chat. But I think some of our topics, it's science fiction, it's drama anyway. But to keep our theme reined in, I'm trying to think of very personal kinds of disorientations that make sense even in a alien scare of the week kind of thing.
One of my favorite examples, and when you and I were piecing this show together, Larry, you had good feedback about that. Well, like what episode doesn't have confusion, disorientation, right. But we were really talking about when things suddenly don't make sense, or you as a viewer,
it's like turns on a dime, kind of quick.
Turns on a dime, and sometimes you as a viewer, maybe the character is very disoriented, or maybe you as a viewer are. One of my favorite examples of this is when both the viewer and the character, we are completely confused and disoriented. And that's Frame of Mind from Star Trek The Next Generation. As a kid, I did not like this episode when it first aired. And I think the reason I didn't like it is I was so confused. What is happening?
As a kid when this first aired, but go ahead.
I won't tell you how old I was when this episode first came out. Let's just say I was
don't say you were listening through your mom's womb. Just don't say she was.
Oh gosh, no. No.
Okay.
I was still learning some of the basics of algebra. Let's just say that. So this episode is quite confusing and disorienting. Riker seems to be caught in this weird play thing. It's come to life. Data is like this evil scientist. They're trying to like help him, but he's trying to escape. All this, it's very strange what is happening. And over the course of the episode, Riker, like things just don't add up for him. His reality as he knew it, and the people in it, they're just not operating the way they're supposed to. And by the end of the episode, we learn that there's this covert mission went wrong. He was impacted by this alien probe. This is Riker's subconscious trying to defend himself against the probe, which then to me makes me think of also dreams and how dreams can be confusing and disorienting. And sometimes we can, oftentimes when we wake up in the middle of a dream is when we remember it the most. And people have been having more vivid dreams right now because of the intense emotions we're experiencing. But people also aren't sleeping as well. And when you don't sleep as well, you're more likely to wake up in the middle of the night, and you're more likely to wake up in the middle of a dream. So you're having more vivid dreams, you're more likely to wake up, which means you're also more likely to remember them. So all this stuff is coming into play, and this also contributes to confusion or disorientation. When I was a kid, Larry, I had a dream that my parents got me the brand new video game system, and then I woke up to go play it, and I opened up the cabinet and it wasn't there. And I'm like, what the heck happened? And then it's only then that I realized, that was a dream. That wasn't real, but it
Yeah.
felt so real. And I was
I
so
had a dream
confused
the
by
other
it.
night where I dreamed that I had my glasses on, not my contacts, and I was camping or I was in a mountains or something, and it's like I was at the edge of a scenic cliff, and I leaned over to do something with glasses in my hand, and I subconsciously like opened this hand and let my glasses like crash down rocks, and I was like, oh damn, I can't believe I'm out here and now I've got to go get a new pair of glasses. And the first thing when I woke up in the morning was I was feeling stupid for having dropped and broken my glasses. And I went through like the first 30 minutes of the morning thinking I was going to have to go down and make an appointment or go in and finally after about an hour I was like, wait a minute. Like they're right there. But it was like, oh God, that's one more thing I have to do, and I have to go out with the mask on and do it and blah, blah.
Yeah.
So yes, I know exactly. And that was a very simple little idea, but it was like, oh.
Larry, I think your example is something that we all are experiencing, because when we are dealing with more stress, when it's harder for us to fall asleep, when we're having these vivid dreams, when there's a million things we have to figure out how to do and how to navigate, it becomes so much easier for us to get confused and to get disoriented and to be impacted by these things. Like, how many of us, this has happened so much to me, have lost something in their homes and have had a hard time finding it this past year.
And after 9 or 10 months of people working at home, like my wife started working at home, and the other day, 2 weekends ago, we had a big COVID clean out, but stuff had just been piling up. And
a good old-fashioned COVID cleanup.
You're welcome. Hashtag. But like the Amazon boxes, it's like, can I throw this box?
Oh gosh, I hate. Oh my gosh,
I hate that box. Don't throw that box. So we've had like this pile of boxes because we were gonna clean things out and we need to reorg. Anyway, no, I totally get it. It's been a weird. Yeah. That's all been weird. Yeah, it's here's the thing. It's like in a normal time, if it's the middle of the night and you don't want to turn, you have to get up and like go to the kitchen and you walk through your apartment or through your house. And it's the middle of the night, and you don't turn any lights on because you know where everything is. You can't do that now. I'm constantly, banging my toe on something that's sitting out in a weird place. Even after a couple of months, it's like, can we just like?
Yeah, I've mentioned this in a previous episode.
I
have no idea.
Familiar terrain being not familiar now is very literal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's very literal, and I know I've mentioned this before on the show, but. Your mind doesn't really differentiate between making very big decisions and making minor decisions. And we are finding ourselves having to make a lot of decisions every day because we are in this new territory. And as a result, that creates a lot of stress. It's a lot to navigate. Larry, I have so many of those stupid boxes in my home. I try to clear them out every Sunday night because my daughter will trip and fall on them. And then I feel like a jerk, because I didn't clear these all out. But since we're not really shopping as much in person, we're ordering more stuff, and you're just deciding to have to put away the box and all that sort of stuff. It's another decision on top of all this other stuff I have to do. So yeah, more disorientation here. I love this comment from Ali Martinez. Ali, this might be your first time.
Yay.
Is this Ali's first time on Life Support Live? It might be.
It's not. It's the first. I don't know. Maybe early, but good to see you. Yay.
Good to see you. I love the cosplay as well. Command
Always.
Red, always great to cosplay in. I think seeing our Star Trek characters disoriented shows that let me bring it back up, that even when humanity has evolved, they're still experiencing struggle. Despite best intentions, not everything goes to plan. Emotion can still be overwhelming. It makes the characters real to me and helps me to relate to them. I love this comment, Ali. I think that's something I really gained from Lower Decks as well. Is they're still Starfleet. They still represent the ideals of the Federation, but they're not the senior staff. They're still learning and figuring out and trying to get better. And that's been a great quality of Michael Burnham throughout Star Trek Discovery, as Star Trek Discovery has had its ups and downs. Michael Burnham has always been a character who is about I am aspiring to get better. I am working on becoming better. And I am true to my ideals and doing what I think is right. And at the same time, I've got a long way to go to get better, to recover, to connect, to do all of that sort of stuff. So thank you for that comment, Allie. Larry,
yes.
What other episode sticks out to you in terms of?
Well, I'm trying to see, and again, guys, I'm catching up the chat here, trying to stay up current, and so many things going by, and a lot of these were on our list. I mean, we had like a list of 15 or 20, and then I pulled, and a lot of these are on here, and some weren't. I was trying to at least get something from all the series. I don't think I did anything from Enterprise, but yeah, I mean, to me, what you just said.
Because we talked about how the reason we didn't pull anything specific from Enterprise is we talked about the whole show is kind of about this. It's about being
a learning curve.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Klingons, a Kling what?
Klingot.
Yeah, a Klingot. I love that line from the trailer. I really love that line. Yeah, but sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, the whole reason the thing was set in Oklahoma, Broken Bow, Oklahoma, which is timber, not corn, but was because Rick wanted. Oh, I'm doing a K3. Oh no, I just launched into a K3 here without thinking about it.
It's okay. We can always have accidental K3s.
Rick wanted somebody to say there's a Klingon in Oklahoma or something, which is funny. And as Libby
Oklahoma, where the
and my inside old-time knowledge here is I know Libby was a Klingon in Arkansas, so that's almost the same thing. So there's a shout out to old days Libby. Okay, anyway.
Oh gosh, was the Klingon doing
one long bit of confusion and disorientation, and then you got even before the Xindi year. So yeah.
Larry, was that Klingon doing lazy circles in the sky?
Hey, we belong to the land.
And the land we belong to is
all red dirt. Okay.
Yeah.
But what was I trying to say? So we put
I don't know.
Going
by. I'm so confused.
Sometimes, and some of this gets back to the whole they're copying each other. Like there's Inner Light, but then there's also Hard Time, which was like, at least when Picard is trapped in a future life for years within a small time, he's at least not at hard labor at prison. He's at least with a family on a dying planet who all love him versus O'Brien, who is just in the most massive, O'Brien must suffer plot ever, where he's in prison for 30 years, not with his family growing older.
Oh my gosh.
Or there's all kinds of plots like that, or it's Troy wakes up and she's a Romulan and she's confused for a minute, or it's Kira wakes up and she's a Cardassian, which I think I sent you one of. So,
yes.
Whether it's Face of the Enemy or it's, and I've just gone blank on the somebody, that one, Second Skin. But that's one
Wonderful
of those things
episode.
Where, and again, it's the confusion is forced by an external party here. Think our characters walk in something don't have whatever, and that's a little confusing, but lots of time for confusion and all these plots.
This is why, Larry, this is the problem with Deep Space Nine. Any time we pick a topic, there are so many examples from Deep Space Nine related to that topic. You go back every episode of Life Support Live, we constantly have this problem. Pick up character, we can do a whole hour on each of those characters. My favorite example comes from the season premiere of Deep Space Nine. This was season 3 premiere, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
The Search.
So
this is where so much stuff happens. First off,
I was trying to say.
That was Search Part 2. Yeah. Spoilers for Search Part 2 if you haven't seen it. But Search Part 1 begins with a vessel decloaking, and it's a Federation vessel that's decloaking, unlike anything we've seen. And Cisco is in command, and you're just thinking, what is happening here? The Treaty of Alderaan, folks. What are we doing? And then there's a Romulan on the bridge who has to be there and observe, and then will disappear. And then why did she disappear? And we never saw her ever again.
She's in the Delta Quadrant. She's been taken off with Voyager.
Right.
That's why.
Right. She had other stuff to do
elsewhere.
Actress,
anyway. Yeah, that was a great line on my con slideshow for like 2 years. What happened to Tarul? Oh, look, it's Martha Hackett. She's in the Delta Quadrant.
That episode.
Remember con slideshows? Remember people get? Oh, anyway. Okay.
I remember. It starts in a moment where you as an audience are very disoriented, as is the crew of seeing the Defiant. But then the whole story is about finding the founders, and as that story unfolds, we realize the characters have been trapped in this mind game by the founders, who are trying to understand their secrets and further develop their plan for invasion. They think
Square one of that.
Right.
To follow, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, they think they think Wei Yun is like a founder, right? I think that
it's not Wei Yun. It's one of the
another
people.
Vorta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they think
I mean, the Dominion in itself is such a great confusing enemy. In much the same way that the Borg were in that first episode when we meet them, Q, you're like, who are these people? But for the Dominion, it's such a slow burn of confusion. Who are these people? What do they want? How does this society work? There's just whispers of the Dominion in season 2 of Deep Space Nine, and it just slowly unravels. I think that's
not
a
unlike
great
the way
episode.
the great Xindi hunt in season 3 of Enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very structured puzzle. Yeah.
And I think, Larry, that
real storytelling. Yeah.
Both the Dominion and the Xindi are a bit of an example of what we've been experiencing in 2020, where events happen, like the destruction of the Odyssey or the attack on Earth by the Xindi, and we're trying to figure out what the heck has occurred here. And those pieces we don't know really for years to come. Sometimes months or years.
Pearl Harbor, like 9/11, like JFK's assassination, like the Watergate burglary break-in. I mean, yes.
These crises, they have an immediate emotional impact, but the fallout, it takes us so long to figure out what's actually happened, and it can be a very confusing, disorienting time.
Whether there is an emotional, some of those things I just rattled off, and the Xindi attack on Earth, or the Breen attack during the Dominion War on Earth, or whatever. Some of them have an emotional attack. There's an emotional moment immediately. The sneaky thing. Sometimes we get these things and they're sneaky, and they're like the Watergate break-in I mentioned. That wasn't a huge impact at the moment, but it eventually accelerated into something that was more. It was still disorienting and confusing as it went along, and there was still a puzzle to unravel, and that was human-driven, not combination of situations. But still, they are disorienting and confusing, and I don't know. Someday we should do a topic on conspiracy theories, because some people find.
Oh yeah.
We should do that. Some people find.
Wolf 359. Larry, it was Wolf 359 was the inside job.
Thank you, Lower Decks. We have we've got something beyond the Voyager conspiracy episode of Voyager. Now we have something to bookmark.
The Dominion War never happened. I love this comment from Victoria. We should add, that's the problem with Deep Space Nine to the drinking game. Victoria, let's turn that over to Jared as the keeper of the drinking game rules.
I don't know. I'm also starting to think another thing for the drinking game was when we say, well, we were going to find an example from Enterprise, but...
Oh, poor Enterprise. Larry, it's Enterprise's time is coming near. I think it really is.
You almost got that past me, yeah. See, half of the theme song after the first, we just got into, we just go laga gaga wag. It's like, what is he even saying? It's like, aside from lyrics,
my friends and I.
Is lagging back. It's like, what did he say? A lagging back. What is he saying? I don't get it.
My friends and I, we had a whole.
Shut up and just say I can touch the sky. Okay, I'll.
My friends and I had a whole interpretive dance for the intro of Enterprise, because we thought it was so ridiculous. And my part in that dance was, I would say, and no one's gonna bend or break me. That was my part of
The
the
sad thing is,
interpretive.
I was totally confused and disoriented, but thanks to your visual, now I totally
Right.
could see the whole. I am
Yeah.
no longer confused and or dazed and confused, as
Yeah.
the movie about my time is. Well, I didn't get a Grease. I didn't get a Happy Days. We didn't get a '60s thing, but we have like one movie for the mid '70s. Anyway, we should get back to Star Trek before
Let's
we
get
even.
back to Star Trek. With Voyager, is there anything you'd like to dive into with Voyager here? I think
Well,
we've got one
there
great
were some good
example.
mysteries. The silver blood aliens were disorienting to the audience. The Mike and Denise have come up with a clever name for the silver blood aliens, but for years they were the silver blood aliens. The duplicates, the Voyager crew. Um, yeah, the theme from Enterprise will always be the song from Patch Adams. But one that I thought that I remembered, and it wasn't about Seven, and it wasn't about Janeway. It was a Babon show, Barge of the Dead, because it was bizarre, and they never did exactly. They never said, every other show, it's alien interference. Oh, it's even the show where Odo and three colleagues are thrown back into the occupation days. It turns out to be something weird with his, morphogenic matrix or something. But this episode, Barge of the Dead, when B'Elanna is, and we get to, background nerds get to know all about Klingon death ritual and death belief. But that Barge of the Dead was never quite, it was going back and forth, being very disorienting, where her reality and this image, is she dreaming? Maybe, but then she's coming away within, it was a very spooky show. And I don't think the show even wrapped up exactly what happened. But that was disorienting for her. And I still think, even as a fan watching it later, is disorienting. And that was exactly the way I know Ron sold that before he made his Exodus. Gosh, a Klingon show on Voyager, imagine that. But I shouldn't say made his Exodus. I was being polite there, before Ron was forced out. But I think Brian is the one that wrote the script from that. Anyway, I should have looked that up. But anyway, that's one that I thought was really and it wasn't even a wacky doodle science or sci-fi thing or new aliens. It was B'Elanna turning back into her, very baffling moment. But there's others. I rattle off a couple there.
There's a lot of examples from Voyager. I mean, we could even begin with Caretaker, Part 1. There's confusion and disorientation. Where are we? What's happened?
Right.
One common thread we're seeing here, I don't want to unravel the tapestry, but if I can just pull on one thread, just a little bit, Larry, if you will indulge me. The thread of needing information. Where are we? What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
What has happened? What's occurred? This is a common thread between all of these episodes. Right. We all need to run a level 1 diagnostic when these sort of rapidly changing situations occur. We saw that with all of these characters, and we've all experienced that in our own lives right now, and it'll tie into the counselor's log just in a moment. We also have, moving forward, we talked a little bit about Enterprise. Let's talk a little bit about Star Trek Picard. Sometimes it's easy for us to forget about Star Trek Picard.
Again, a serialized show. There's 4 or 5 confusing, disorienting mysteries all the way through. But yes, now that we've got a whole 6 months to digest Picard or whatever, yeah.
And
6 years, actually, with COVID time, but yes.
We have a character who is trying to understand who she is. And the whole series really begins with the confusion that both of these sisters.
I love that. That's her reaction to her confusion, and then finding some truth about it, and then her truth, even Daj and Soji, and her truth even opens her up to be manipulated, because now she's vulnerable. And it's like the first stage is do you have it there? The one where Narek is able to manipulate her before she realizes what's going on?
Yeah, I have it. This scene, yes. Due to our community guidelines, I will not say too much about this scene.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, because I didn't pull a picture, because this would go on and on and on. But it's like her disorientation and confusion is it's texture, not trivia. There's multi-layers to her confusion. One thing, she's an AI herself, which she's figuring out. But also, even her invented past and all of that. So spoilers on Picard if you haven't seen it yet. You had a free month. What were you doing? But it's also how it's like, but even though she's an AI, she's a synth, she's an android, her reaction is, the 5 stages of grief, or what, the 5 stages of loss, or whatever that is. Mr. Dr. Psych, you'd know this. But we get to see it play out with her. There, she's vulnerable to figuring out she's disoriented and figuring out this new thing, and she's vulnerable to manipulation. By the time she gets to Nepenthe, she's angry about it. I mean, she's like, you see her working through her. I don't want to steal your playbook here, but it's interesting. No. They work through her stages, and then she finally, by the time it comes down to the android planet at the end, and she even goes through a couple there, because that's the turn. She goes from helping them to being the hero. But it's like she's playing out her massive cycle of confusion and disoriented, like in each episode. I didn't think about that until I sat down to structure this. It's only been 6 months. But I started thinking, look, you're seeing reactions that we can have in her faces on screen. And it wasn't like a single reaction to being disoriented. Like, I get my bearings and I figure out my stuff and now I'm good to go. It was very much a human typical, play out, and different things had different emotions.
And it's different than a lot of the other episodes we're talking about. Tim just mentioned the wonderful episode Conundrum, where the Enterprise crew
that was on my
swipe.
Because they're all massively jointly all. It's the whole crew, or the
whole crew is going through that.
All confused together.
Yeah, I must be the bartender because I'm behind behind the bar. I guess that's
commander because I have the thing. Yeah.
Right. That's it. I really enjoy that episode. But in this in the Star Trek Picard,
because who is that guy?
Who's that guy? He just appeared. No, totally. The thing about Star Trek Picard and how you lay out that example of grief, of working out these different aspects of grief, it's wonderful, and it's what serialized storytelling can do better than more episodic, because we can see the trajectory of something over a long period of time. And is that Soji, or is it right here? I always confuse the two names.
It's Daj.
Is it Daj?
Daj was the first one. That's the one they promoted.
Soji. Right. Yeah. So Soji is going through both grief at the loss of her sister, and also the trauma of realizing you're not who you thought you were. And the ways in which that plays out in people's lives is playing out over the course of that season.
I just found out my dad is not my real dad. Hold my beers. I just found out I'm not a real person. I'm not an organic being. Okay, yay.
Hold my synthetic oil, whatever androids need to keep themselves.
Doesn't Soji sound like some kind of like Greek cola or something? Drink Soji. I don't know. Okay. I just always thought it would be some brand of cola I'd see if I took a trip around Europe or something.
It does remind me of Sochi, which was the site of the Olympic Winter Games. So there's that. And this is kind of, this is where, rounding out the series, we would have to go into Lower Decks. And I think there's some examples there, but we can't talk about Lower Decks because, again, not everyone has completely found it.
Well, again, there's 15,000 different confusion points in Lower Decks, but yes.
Yeah, we got some great comments here. Cairo saying Daj is confused about herself, Soji as well. Picard ran away from who he is. Rios doesn't like who he is. Rafi and Seven dislike who they've become. Eleanor hasn't found himself. Actually, they're all confused about themselves. The Star Trek Picard is really about this existential journey all these characters have to find each other, to find themselves, to find their purpose again.
That would be a perfect series to put together like in 2019, 2020. They should do that.
They should do that, yeah. And they should greenlight it for a second season, which we might see one day. Yeah. And so here it says, in all of these examples of sudden confusion, the characters are able to rely on their core beliefs. Picard's leadership, Worf's vigilance, Deanna's empathy, Data's curiosity, great writing, and great comment. So here, that is a wonderful insight, especially in that episode Conundrum, where the episode ends is, the guy who's not supposed to be there is like, we need to fire on them. They've been at war. We need to help them.
Yes.
And all the characters are like, I got this feeling that this doesn't add up. This doesn't seem right. Like, why would us, this powerful warship, be involved
with these
in
wimps.
yeah, this doesn't make sense. In times of great change and crisis, this gets into the counselor's log a little bit. Relying on your core values and beliefs as a person and who you are can be very grounding when you're disoriented.
Maybe you should just flip the counselor's log, because it's like we've been.
You know what? I'm happy to flip that switch.
We have the longest teaser ever in history, so maybe it's time to put the yes. Okay.
Let's jump into the counselor's log here. So this is when we do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the psychology behind what we're talking about here. Larry, there's a lot of things I could talk about here. We could talk about confusion as it relates to dementia. We can talk about confusion as it's the core symptom in psychosis. But I want to focus this again on 2020, what we've been going through, and what might be most helpful for the most amount of people. And with that gets me to psychological first aid. So we all know about first aid. If someone's bleeding, try to stop the bleeding. Call the emergency hotline, get some help, right? Make sure the person is still breathing, give them CPR if you're trained in it, all that sort of stuff. A lot of us know about what first aid is. Not many of us, or most of us, do not know what psychological first aid is. And what psychological first aid is, there's 5 very simple steps. And I've actually got a video about this on my YouTube channel called Psychological First Aid, or How to Give Psychological First Aid, if anyone wants to share that in the comments. But step 1 of psychological first aid is safety, stabilize, and comfort. Is help the person to feel like they're in a safe place. Help to stabilize them if they haven't had food or drink. That's the most. Yes, that's the most important thing, is making sure someone's hydrated and fed. Because if you get dehydrated, Larry, you get confused and disoriented. It's hard. We've all been through that. There was a day this week where I realized halfway through the day I haven't had any water yet. Maybe that's why I'm in such a crabby mood.
When I get a headache, I get food. But the main way I get headaches is I go, "Oh, I haven't eaten today." Yeah. Okay. I get not food headaches, but I mean like hunger headaches, I should say. Yeah.
A lot of times when people are escaping a crisis or a trauma, or there might be there's something very scary is happening. They need to feel safe. They need some comfort. They need to be fed, and they really need to feel like those basic needs are met. And then number 2, Larry, this is that thread I was pulling on earlier, is information. Information is step 2 of psychological first aid. What is happening? What do you know? What are the unknowns? And what do I do? We see that with every character here. So a few years ago, there was someone in my friend circle was going through their very first panic attack. And they were with a mutual friend who then called me and said, "What's going on? What do I do?" I just provided some very simple information about panic attacks, that they do rise, but they do come down over time, that you can get through this panic attack, and here are some ways to feel grounded. And just that practical information of knowing that you can ride out a panic attack was so helpful to that person to be able to ride that out. Because it can be so jarring and so scary, because it might feel like, am I having a heart attack? And that's not it. It's this different thing. But very specific, practical information about what they're going through and the larger consequences can help. And Larry, this was the really great failure in the United States. There's many great failures in the United States, especially this year. But in 2020, not only did we not have a lot of practical information about the coronavirus and the global pandemic, we also didn't have consistent information. It is actually very hard to get people to take action when a crisis is breaking out. Because most of the time, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a blizzard, whether it's a global pandemic, the signs aren't there in the beginning. You don't see it for yourself. And humans are wired to respond to the emotions of now. And if you don't see all the sudden changes, you don't know what to do. You and I live in California. We know when it starts shaking, you duck and cover, or you get below like a
Right.
awning or something where there's a clear area, right? A
Right.
safe place, because it's very clear. Oh no, things are shaking. I need to get to safety.
I grew up in Oklahoma. I know what all the tornado watch and warning protocols
Right.
are. Although they've accelerated since I've been gone because now they keep expanding the scale for tougher tornadoes. But yes, you knew what to do. You even knew when to feel safe relatively, but you were still smart. But yeah, exactly. You know the
Well,
warning signs of
and
something
and
that's on a pattern.
and that's a great example with growing up in Oklahoma and tornado warnings. You get very consistent information from schools, from the local folks, from families and
There is
communities.
comfort in that. It's printed on
Yes,
shopping bags. I mean, it's like,
yes,
your weathermen and women, your meteorologists on TV are your comfort. Like if the whole news team, they would hang on. The sports and the weather guys and gals were the people they hung on to over the years because those were the comforting faces, especially the meteorologists. They
and
would be around in the
you
old
get
days.
clear, consistent information throughout the entire
Yes.
community. Did you have
Yes.
air sirens that would go off? I don't
Yes.
know. I've never lived in a
Oh yeah,
tornado
yeah,
prone
yeah.
area.
But everybody,
Yeah.
I mean, I can still hear when I was a kid. I can hear Jack Ogle going, "There is a tornado warning in your area." And that back in the old days, they would talk about open some windows and doors and get away from get to the center of the room. Find a bathtub or a closet if you can. I can hear now they say don't worry about opening windows because that was to equalize air pressure. And now they go, in the time you're trying to open windows, the thing could hit and you'd have glass in your face. So forget
Right.
opening a window. But
Right.
yeah, there used to be that clear. They would run the recording for people, and yeah, yeah,
And you have these drills throughout your life, and that's what I grew up with in California. Is we had earthquake drills
hmm
from elementary school on. You know what to do. Now, unfortunately, in America,
but
kids
that's the
have grown
comfort
up.
of knowing. Yeah, and
It's
a lot of
yeah.
our tornado drills are thrown into chaos sometimes by things evolving. But
You know,
yeah,
now kids growing up in the United States, they've
yep,
gone through a whole generation of shooter drills of what
active
happens
shooting
if there's
drills. Yeah, I was
yeah,
just
you know. So yeah, what we all need is clear information in a crisis, and when it comes to psychological first aid, we didn't really have that here, Larry. We need information about what to do because the in most of these crises, those early warning signs, you can't see it. Most of us did not know anyone who had experienced coronavirus early on in this pandemic, so it was very hard to take seriously. The news might be telling you one thing, one leader might be telling you another thing, another might tell you another. We need clear, consistent information, and outside of that, like what you're talking about with the tornado warnings, people are not going to take any action. People take no action. People
mhm.
just continue with the status quo.
And
Um,
even if we had this perfect world where all of the leadership people were in lockstep of what to do because they take the experts' advice on what to do and then they all agree on it and they portray that. The core thing here is this is a pandemic with a new virus, and even the sincere, like I said earlier, even the sincere governmental leaders and authorities are taking a cue from science, and we like to, even if you are a rational person, the fact is we don't know the ramifications. It's like
yeah,
when Legionnaire's disease broke out, and it was an all new thing, and it was baffling. And now it pops up on other occasions, and they know what to do. But 20 years ago, do you remember this, or do you know what I'm talking about? There was a convention of American Legion guys who are all older people and their men and their wives, whatever. I want to say it was in Pennsylvania, but there was this convention. This weird new disease broke out. Didn't affect anybody who wasn't at this convention at this hotel,
yeah,
and they had to quarantine. And they were baffled and they're running in with all the regular gear, but nothing. It didn't. It's like nothing we've ever seen before, Captain. And nobody fixed it in an hour. It went on and on for
right.
weeks, and it took weeks and months and years before and now they do. But science is not written by TV writers, and
No,
it's not solved in an hour. And all I'm saying is we're learning a lot. They're racing along with the vaccine, but the fact that we don't have, or we may even thought something early on that had to be reversed, and to people
right.
that don't know science and scientific theory, we don't. It's not a TV show. We don't know all the answers in an hour, And that even propagates a
Yeah,
confusion factor, even when it's sincerely not trying to be confusing.
absolutely. We really need all the people we trust to be feeding us the same information, and that information needs to be very simple and actionable.
Which would
Other,
minimize the eventual change if but when you start
yes,
off with that confusion factor, and now you're going to
yes.
put that into a feedback loop and propagate the ripples on ripples, or the confusion upon confusion, that's when we're really sad. It's bad enough just trying to deal with what's close at hand that's confusing.
Right,
To
right.
multiply that is insane. Yeah.
Yeah, Libby has shared that I first heard about the coronavirus when I was having shoulder issues and couldn't cover my head. Oh no, this is a different one. Sorry. This comment from Libby: someone I know died of coronavirus just after Easter. So although I was already taking it seriously, it really drove things home for me. And Victoria said something similar. My uncle died early from it, so it was real for me as well. A psychologist colleague of mine died of coronavirus very early in this pandemic, as did an uncle to a close friend of mine, and it really made me realize how serious this is. But Larry, there's such this virus is so insidious, where you can be infected and not have any symptoms, and you can be infected and not show symptoms till later. And it affected different parts of the country at different times, different parts of the world at different times. So getting that clear cut information about it when there's little information about it and when it's been politicized really has made it very difficult for all of us to navigate this. And that's just step 2 of psychological first aid. Step 3 is get connected to social support. So get connected to help in the way that you want to be connected, whether that's watching Star Trek with a friend, or it's going on a socially distant walk with a friend, talking to someone, being with other people that you feel support you in the way that you want to be with them. That's step 2 of psychological first aid.
Yeah.
Step 4 is
Finding
help the person to cope in whatever way they want, whether that's binge watching Star Trek, listening to music, having some chocolate ice cream like Counselor Troy, whatever helps for you.
Live every week.
Come to Life Support Live. And then step 5 is to connect with help. So if someone is struggling for a long period of time and these steps haven't helped them, get them connected to professional help. We used to think in the olden days, Larry, that psychological first aid meant someone's gone through something very bad and then have them debrief and talk about it over and over again. Mm-hmm. That's not the case. Most people recover from crises and traumas without any need to talk about it. But all of us can benefit from safety, information, social connection, coping, and professional support when needed. That's what psychological first aid is.
I would think that, yeah, you're right. The whole thing about talking, the Mr. Carlins of the world, if you go back to the Bob Newhart show. But I would think, though, it's like, if I broke my leg and I couldn't get to a doctor, yeah, I might kind of like ham-handedly do it at home. I might try to set it. I might, or not even so much a leg, maybe like a finger or a toe, something really minor. I could go and I could get the A1 X-rays and knowledgeable, the top-notch care. But if I couldn't afford a doctor, if I was in the boonies and I didn't have one, or I didn't even know, sometimes you injure something you don't even know till later. Somebody goes, wow, you've got a broken bone in your finger. Oh, really? Well, I knew I hurt it once, but I didn't know it was broken. But there's times when it's like we heal at home, and like you just said, but maybe just the more awareness, the more knowledge we have helps it, because maybe we realize years later, you know what, you didn't even know you broke your finger, let's say.
Right.
And
right.
it swelled up, and you just thought it was a sprain, and it did heal up, but it healed up a little off. And it's not like it's impaired your life until maybe you're now you're in your 60s or 70s and you've got rheumatism around it or something, or arthritis around it, I should have said. But knowledge, what I'm trying to get to here is knowledge. So yes, maybe you've had a trauma and you got through it okay and you went on your life, but maybe there's just a little tiny bit of a fracture there that's going to set a little crooked, and maybe it doesn't impair your life. And maybe you don't spend 5 years with it, but if you had a best practice scenario out of it and you talked about it a little bit with the right person, and sometimes maybe that's somebody that's a loved one or somebody close who can it's just being a second set of eyes and ears.
Yeah. One thing I want.
But all I'm saying is, yes, we all are. Sometimes we go through all our things a lot. But even if there's any one way to find out to share it with a friend, much less a professional, maybe you take less chance of having the bone be reset.
Yeah, and let me expand on that because Linda brings up a comment. I disagree. People need to tell their story out loud to someone who listens at least once. So let me clarify here. What used to happen, and sometimes unfortunately still does, is some tragic event will happen at a school or at a company, and then that company or organization will bring in some type of person that forces everyone to talk about it. And that large-scale debriefing is not good. The evidence doesn't support that.
Industrial counseling.
Yeah, some people's form of coping is to not talk about it and get some distance from it. Other people's form of coping is to talk about it. And you can't force people to cope in one way. People need to cope in their own ways, in ways that work for them.
Not a one-size-fits-all.
It's not a one-size-fits-all. So if you force someone whose coping strategy is, this is too overwhelming for me, I can't talk about it, if you force them to talk about it, they're actually going to do worse. So what we need to do, and why step 4 of psychological first aid is encouraging coping, not encouraging talking about it, is encourage the person to cope in the way that is healthy for them. And they might not know, and it might take a little bit of figuring out, but people do need to cope in different ways. And that's why I say the best coping skill is to connect with other people and be with them in the state that you want to be. Maybe that state means I want to talk about what's going on. Maybe that state means I want to do everything but talk about what's going on. It's different. It's IDIC. Larry gets back to IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And so it's not a one size fits all. But the one thing we can all benefit from is getting trusted, credible, clear information about what to do. And unfortunately, that has been very difficult to do in 2020.
Yeah, but the bottom line here is it should be something, and to be conscious of it. Hopefully,
Yeah.
Just being conscious of it, not being led by, I don't want to say ignorance, but just being led by not being conscious of it. Again, if you say, you know what, I broke my finger and it's not that painful now, it didn't swell up a lot, I'm gonna make my own little wooden splint and tie my finger to that, and I'll just get by, and it's gonna be okay. And you made the choice, and maybe you had enough factor to do that. Maybe somebody else would still argue with you and say, no, you need to go see a doctor. But yes, being aware and then making a choice is always better than making a choice in ignorance or without a lack of, in staying in a confused, disoriented state, only maybe just less so. So, yes.
Absolutely. With that, speaking of information.
Absolutely there, Heidi.
I would like to jump into the K3 factor. This is the part of the show where we do a deep dive into some aspect of the canon, and the K3 refers to the only reference to mental health. Larry presents, and then I go, oh my gosh, Larry, I had no idea.
The real doctor has to take the burden here. Okay, so we've had 2 episodes where I was absent for most of the show, and Ali was absent for most of the show. The show where I was absent for most of the show, you kind of carried on. The show where you were absent, I did about 20 minutes, and I said, I am not going to pretend to tell you a counselor's log and an away mission, guys. So this is my time with the show to maybe, throw something out that will not daze and confuse you. So it's interesting is we're going to go backstage for a typical Trekland kind of thing that everybody in Trekland is used to. A real life confusion factor around Star Trek. I mean, there are some, but I thought for us today, I would go back to a 2 level. One where the person involved was disoriented and confused, quite rightly. And then where that also, the meta of it was that it was fandom. If you want to show us our first slide, Harley.
Yeah.
So maybe some
Let's
of you
make
know this guy, the wheelchair, the smiling
yes.
wheelchair.
Yes.
Maybe some of you know this guy. This is Eugene Wesley Roddenberry. He's the guy that created this show we're talking about, and all of its spin-offs eventually. This is Gene in December 1990. Now, he died in October 1991. As happens with celebrities, as happens with important people, as we just saw happen with the president, sometimes people in power or with a big following, if something is happening with their health in a very severe, possibly even fatal, or a what's the word for fatal? What's the combining Latin word for anyway? When people are potentially in a death situation or their health is declining rapidly, people like to buffer the outside world from that information, right? And so as Gene, basically it sneaked up, even the people around him. Next Generation got started. He was very much there. We have the paper trail on the Trek Files. We talk about this all the time. The second season was very chaotic. Gene's a personal attorney was running around. We love to say the Chaos on the Bridge documentary with Leonard Maizlish interfering with writers, causing all kinds of confusion. The quality of the show the first couple of years was hurt, and people, it was a revolving door of people because of this chaos that his attorney was pulling way beyond the bounds of what an attorney should do for his client. But
enough about Star Trek Discovery. Let's talk about the first few seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yes, by the way, we're talking about 87, not 2017.
Right.
Yeah. But the bottom line here was Leonard Maizlish was protecting his client partly because Gene's age and his health was starting to really decline here big time. And partly because of things that had happened in the past, and partly out of a paranoia that Gene had lost control of the movies, and that paranoia was he wasn't going to lose control of this second chance at, they didn't want to. So some of we talk about, the guruification of Gene and all that. A lot of it was trying to pay his bills, but not everybody invents something like Star Trek that's affected the world the way it has. So you can't blame him for doing that. But fast forward to 1987, 1988, the first season, the second season. As fans, we're just consuming the show. It seems like it's getting better. We all know, no start. Here's a shocker for you, Ali. In 1988, we all didn't have the meme of every Star Trek gets better in its third year.
Right. In fact, TNG was following the opposite path of TOS.
Exactly. Yes.
TOS had a near perfect season 1 and 2. Yes.
Yeah. Matured and then lost out on season 3. So yeah, you
matured and then the dilithium crystals just blew
meant something totally different before, say, 1995.
Right.
Anyway, Gene's health is going down here. Now there's that photo we had. He was at he was at a movie premiere, not a Star Trek premiere, but he was here in Hollywood. I wrote the name down, but anyway, that was December 1990. He was in a wheelchair. He had a cane there with him. What it basically was happening was he was starting to have, now we know, he was having a series of mini strokes. Well, what's one of the most organic ways of suddenly being confused and disoriented when you're losing oxygen to the brain or blood flow, and the stroke is like usually a late in life event, right? Degenerative. Okay. But that was December 1990. They took him out in public in a wheelchair, and that was kind of a shocking thing. But it was a movie premiere I was trying to see here. I gave you such a damn long movie title.
While you're looking that up,
Come See the Paradise, which has nothing to do with Star Trek. So it didn't get a lot of attention. Plus, this is pre-social media. Who the hell knew what was happening every night there's a movie premiere in Hollywood? My point here is that by April, they dedicated April, they had the 100th episode of Star Trek, which, again, Entertainment Tonight might have done a 2-minute story about it. We didn't have... Yeah. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Here's what's her name? Not Dixie Watley, the other one that was there forever. We have an image of that. So they're celebrating the 100th anniversary, the 100th episode of Star Trek. They're no, not that one, the other one.
Whoa. Oh, yes, this one.
Yeah. So here we are. They're cutting the cake. But look, this photo went out to a lot of places. I don't know that everybody noticed that Gene is, you can kind of see the wheelchairs back here, the wheels. But this was April. Yeah. I want to make sure I'm telling you guys right. Yes, this is April 11th. This is the 100th episode, the conclusion of Redemption Part 1. It just happened to be the finale, so they're celebrating the finale and all. They took some other shots of Gene on the in the engine core. So yeah, here's Mike Pillar, here's Rick, here's the cast, yada yada. Some of them are shooting, obviously some of them aren't. They're in their civvies. They have a cake. Yay. It's the 100th episode. That's April.
Right.
He's in the chair, has the cane. That other one you just showed, 2 months later,
Yes.
you kind of get the feeling here. They named a building, a brand new building at the Paramount lot for the Gene Roddenberry, as the Gene Roddenberry building. It was a big thing. They had the original series cast. They had the Next Generation cast. Everybody's there. It was a big hoopty. That was in June of 1991 during the summer of the hiatus. And a lot of people didn't realize this. See here, right here. Here's his cane here, right? Now he's in a director's chair. He stood some, but his health is going. See, not quite a little. I mean, they're out standing in the sun, but he's got a little, dazed, confused look. My point here is that his health was going down. It wasn't ballyhooed. It was hidden a little bit. Like, oh my God, FDR. They never showed him getting out of his metal braces, right, in the day. And then by the time of he died in October. They 2 days before he died, I was watching this. So they showed him a print of Star Trek VI. He always had things to say about the movie because he wasn't in control of them. They showed him a print. He said, "That's great." And they were all like, "Okay." And then a day later, Majors came out and said, "No, Gene has this list of cuts he wants made in the movie." But because he had to pee on the corner somewhere because it was his, so he still had an input, right? But the point here is that Gene was becoming increasingly disoriented and confused to the inner circle because since second season, different writers would talk about Gene not wanting to do a story. We can read now about the evolutions of Captain's Holiday. Picard is too perfect. He wouldn't have sex on a mission. He wouldn't do the thing with Sarek. He wouldn't have a. There are a lot of stories, and young and baby Ron Moore, and even Michael Pillar, his first year coming in to save the series, they would get into huge knockdown. We can't mention Spock and having a wedding. You can't say Spock. You have to say, so they say Sarek's son instead of Spock. There's all kinds of things that Gene was demanding, and he was increasingly becoming not coherent with himself. He'd say, "You can't do that." And then 3 episodes later, he would let a writer do that. He was becoming more confused and disoriented, and people at first didn't get it. And then there were times, now it's come out, where they'd be in a meeting and he would just go aphasic, or he would just zone out for a few minutes. So that was increasingly happening. He was increasingly in frailer and frailer and frailer shape. They were, Rick was really doing the day-to-day. He was kind of ceremonially there. Richard Arnold and Susan Sackett were both there with him. And then we get to the point where he's having mini strokes and increasingly becoming shut down and wheelchairy and only coming in, for special events and things. And then October comes along. He took some kind of a family reunion trip back east and really they realized later that he had a mini heart attack, a stroke, I should say, over that trip. So his health is going way down. So yes, he finally dies near a week before Halloween in October 1991. It shocks the world. It shocks the Star Trek world because a lot of people did not know that, those photos was happy, and people didn't know. And it was still a shock to people that worked because he wasn't coming in to work every day.
Right.
So the crew, the work community is confused and disoriented, but it's like Gene's slow descent there and disoriented to his workmates. Why is Gene throwing a fit about this when why is he doing this when he did that later? Well, then he dies, he passes, and now suddenly it's fandom that is confused and disoriented. And the apex of this, really, I think the last time he was in public, aside from that like small event, the rededication, the dedication in his honor of the building, that last time he was at a convention was in June, also at the Creation Con here in LA. It was a 25th anniversary event for Next Generation. And he came out on stage in his wheelchair. It was the first time Rod, his son, got involved with the family business, and he was still long-haired, radical teenage Rod.
Yeah.
He rolls his dad out in the wheel. In fact, that first picture I thought was from this. I'm trying to find the clippings because at the time it made headlines because he comes out, he's in a wheelchair, and the audience kind of gasped. It was like, 2,000 people at the shrine here. I wasn't here then, but I read about it. Even that got to us in Oklahoma.
Not the Gene Roddenberry Shrine, but the Shrine Auditorium.
Auditorium, yes.
A little distinction.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. But the point here is, in the middle, I gave you the big picture there, the decline, and but the shocker moment to me was when sitting in Oklahoma, even, and reading, reports later. He came out on stage, standing ovation. People are a little verklempt. Oh my God, Gene's in a wheelchair. Oh my God. But he was talking, and they got over it, and he answered questions, and he talks, and he was a little slow on his words, a little bit. Well, someone somewhere along so people were like applauding and all that. It wasn't a near-death experience, but people could tell that this had been a step down. But in the Q&A, someone said something, or they actually wanted to ask a normal question and maybe even critique a point. I don't know what the point was.
That sounds like a typical convention question, yeah. I have a question, but first I'm going to go on a rant. What was my question? I'm not sure. Please answer.
Remembering. They did. But the point is, Gene was still answering questions. It was his Q&A time. And the person made a comment, which basically pissed Gene off. Now, as we've seen, things are pissing him off. Yeah. And he went on a rant in front of 2,000 people, basically saying, I don't care what you I think the quote of the night was, I don't care what you say. I'm Star Trek. What I say is what Star Trek is. You don't know shit. And that's kind of like a quoted line that came out, and it shocked people. And some of our room here I was going to try to dig it out, and I didn't have time in the last couple of days. But my point here is, that was a confusing, disorienting moment because he was using harsh language, critiquing a fan, acting all like his whole political facade, his day-to-day tact and diplomatic that we all carry with us was gone. And it made headlines because it was shocking, and what, he doesn't know he's drunk, or it's the liquor talking, or it's he's on drugs, or he's in the hospital and he's still coming down from his whatever, his Vicodin. And we all have ways we, for good or bad, explain those kinds of things away. But that was a shocking moment that was very confusing and disorienting to the fan base. And everything kind of laid low. And, it was in the middle of a summer where they were dedicating the building and all that. So anyway, my point here is that Gene himself was obviously, as a person having those health difficulties, was a person who was increasingly confused and disoriented in his world. It was disorienting for the people around him who didn't always know the latest or the most up-to-date or the detail, or even as they found out later. And people were like going back in time and going, 2 years ago, I bet that was what was going on. And when he said that to me in 1989, I bet that was what was going on in 1990. And then most of all, for the greater world at large, the fan base and then the world at large, we didn't know any of this was going on until something like that quote on stage in front of thousands of people hits the news, and we're like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's sometimes it's a slow motion event, and sometimes it's more than one person. But anyway, this was our theme today, and I thought that's just where my mind went for the K3 today. So I don't know if I was a shock or a surprise or what for you, but there you go, guys.
Well, it's a lot. I got a few thoughts. First, I want to just share Libby's comment here. I think too many people forget that creators and actors are first and foremost people. Fans should treat them as people with all the good and baggage that comes along with being a real person. And I think that's really well said, Libby. Larry, I became a fan of Star Trek because of Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. And so for me, my journey to Star Trek began with a film that's dedicated to the memory of Gene Roddenberry. So for me, he was always a past figure and not a living person.
And you are way more. We've long since passed the point where you are in the majority of fans.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I think a lot of people, Gene Roddenberry's a historical figure. He doesn't live on in the way George Lucas does with Star Trek. Star Wars. And the complicated connections that George Lucas has had a complicated relationship with later Star Wars as well. You can see a lot of interviews with him about that.
Even the people.
No, absolutely. And the people have had a complicated relationship with George Lucas. Yeah. So what does stick out to me here is the description you're having very much parallels the experience I had with the passing of Leonard Nimoy. And with the paparazzi picture, you posted the picture of Gene Roddenberry in the wheelchair. It reminded me of the paparazzi photo of Leonard Nimoy in a wheelchair, and how, and that played out very differently. It spread all over social media, and a lot of folks in the public, but then also in the fandom, were confused and disoriented and concerned.
Well, I was going to say real quick, that's a difference in 1991 versus now. Right.
Yes.
Where we have cameras everywhere and 24/7 social and everything. Yeah.
And I think this is a complicated issue. Libby says it well about, we need to remember that these folks who have helped create this thing that we love, they are people, and they deserve their own privacy, and they deserve the support of their family. We have these things called parasocial relationships, where we form real relationships with the actors and the characters because we see them every day.
Distance.
Yeah. Our brain thinks that these are familiar people in our lives because we see them all the time. These are real relationships, even though we've never met the person, even though they might not exist. Seeing I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about it, but when Data dies in Star Trek Nemesis, kind of dies. Now we know with Star Trek Picard, it's complicated. But when we lost Data, it had a huge emotional impact on me, even though Data's not a real person. So we feel these real connections to people we haven't met in reality, and at the same time, this type of confusion and decline is a part of the human experience. And we need to respect that, honor that. And it reminded me a lot of what you're talking about with Gene's decline was reminding me a lot of Ronald Reagan. And he we found out later, had dementia and likely was experiencing some symptoms of this in his in some of the years as president. And he was really sheltered from public life after he left office, probably for this reason. And
they were doing parodies on Saturday Night Live of him playing with his action figures. Remember that? They'd come in and they'd put them away and make it. Last couple
we have to we have to honor this experience and help people in the best way we can with compassion, because this is a part of the human experience. Speaking of that,
one more point here.
Yeah.
Aside from the disorientation and confusion, that whole thing about sheltering celebrities and political leaders and whatever, sheltering their decline or health scares from the public at large to avoid a panic or whatever you want to say. Contrast that with one thing maybe social media, Instagram, everything has done. Contrast that with Kenneth Mitchell's announcement to the world of his ALS, right? There was no hiding it. There was no shame, whether it's a shame factor or it's, oh my God, I won't be able to work now because I won't get hired. I won't get cast. Anybody that's dealing with their politicians, actors, whatever. He comes out and says, well, here I am. And other celebrities, it's become a trend now. The honesty thing, some people say there's a little too much honesty, but I'm just thinking as we were talking there, I hadn't thought about it, but as I was saying it, I thought, contrast that with Kenneth Mitchell, who went on the cruise in his wheelchair and said, hey guys, here I am. And now they've actually got him involved with some current Treks, doing what he could, whether it's voicing or he did voices on Lower Decks. And they're talking about having him be a human on Discovery, I think, or something, that he's going to be in human form. Maybe he'll be in a chair, maybe not. But it's like, it's okay. And he was in a family, yes, that's going to keep him employed a little bit. But the world knows, the world at large, it's fine. And we celebrate the awareness. A lot of people come out with whatever it is that's their issue as a way to further the fact that we should talk about that issue more, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, that's another contrast between the here and then that it struck me, that you wouldn't even get into some of these issues if it was out there. And maybe people would get more I don't think Gene was lacking for medical care if he wanted it. But even our awareness and the needs that we perceive needs, like, don't let this out. If that's not an issue, or people hey, we'll whatever. But if there's any issues involved with it being more open, sometimes now tends to be better outcomes than feeling you had to keep.
There's that story about people before Next Generation premiered saying, how can there be a bald man in the 24th century? And Gene saying in the 24th century it won't matter if you're bald or not.
No one will care.
And no one will care. And I don't think it's, Star Trek Discovery has really shown us a lot more diversity in terms of the types of people who are serving on the starship, the different...
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Discovery's done a nice job of showing that. And, we have Geordi LaForge, who was the first character to really have to be blind and to be piloting the ship. That's such a beautiful image right there. Star Trek has really highlighted that no matter where you're coming from, you have worth, and you can make a difference, and you can contribute to society. And I think we're seeing that really play out now in terms of actors with different abilities being featured on Star Trek, and then also the honor and compassion to which we're also bringing people behind the scenes who might be struggling with these things themselves. Mm-hmm. Let's do a quick away mission, and then we're going to jump into the
away
chat.
Mission. Yeah.
Yes, I have a very quick one. This one is targeting that the psychological first aid got a little bit more of that confusion. I want to tackle the disorientation a little bit. I want to give everyone a quick skill that you can use when you're feeling disoriented. Larry, don't get too disoriented there. Let me bump your head. Get back into the frame. Don't get too disoriented. There you go.
I'm disoriented being on our virtual camera. Yeah.
The skill I want to talk about is grounding. When you might feel disoriented, when you might feel like you're getting out of your body a little bit and you're going on autopilot, when you might feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we call this depersonalization. You feel yourself as less of a real person. Or depersonalization, I'm blanking on the other word. There's another word too. When
I'm not laughing at you. I'm catching up in the chat, so I'm sorry.
Please go for it. When you're feeling less plugged in with yourself and less oriented to what's happening around you, you can always use a grounding skill. Grounding skills help you to feel firmly planted in the current environment, or firmly planted in some type of sensation, or firmly planted in an idea or a concept. So whenever you might struggle with these kind of things, use a grounding skill. What are the grounding skills? I'm going to list out a few of them, and then if anyone wants to learn more, I have a video called How to Stop Having Panic Attacks Now, Exposure, Coping, and Grounding. That goes through these skills in detail. So if anyone wants to look up that video, Stop Having Panic Attacks Now, that will guide you through all of this. The first skill is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I might have mentioned this before on the show, but focus on 5 things you can see around you right now. So the visuals. Listen to or touch 4 different textures. So maybe your shirt, maybe your pants, maybe the desk in front of you. Touch 4 different things. Listen to 3. Yes, your skin can be very grounding. Just feeling the sensations on your skin. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Pinch me, I'm disoriented. Yeah.
Listen to 3 different sounds in the environment. Pick up on 2 different smells in the environment. And one, notice the taste that's in your mouth right now. For most people, what you might find is one of these works better for you, or a couple of these work better for you. And if so, if the visual really helps, or if the sound really helps, just focus in on that. So sometimes if someone is having a very disoriented state, we might get them to listen to my voice. Listen to the sound of my voice. Just concentrate on my voice. Or I want you to feel the sensation of the ground below you. Or just focus here on the smell of this. You take a peppermint candy out. Just notice the taste of the peppermint candy. any of these kind of sensory things can be very grounding and can get you plugged back into the moment. So you always have this skill. Sometimes I work with people who have a lot of anxiety with public speaking and public presentations, and I'll talk about, get grounded in the clothes you're wearing, or the feeling of the microphone, or in just one person in the audience. There's a lot of ways that you can get pulled back into the moment. That's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Another thing that you can do that might help is focus on a mental map. So think of yourself walking through a place that you know very well. This could be your home. This could be your local community. This could be a fictional place. This could be the bridge of the Enterprise D. Whatever it is, imagine yourself going through this room. If you're feeling very overwhelmed and you feel yourself getting drawn into a traumatic memory, if you feel yourself getting overwhelmed by the news, you can always go to this mental place and find yourself walking through it. Maybe, Larry, you can find yourself walking through the San Diego Convention Center, since we've been there many times for Comic-Con together. You can imagine yourself kind of running to Hall H. Whatever it might be, imagine yourself going through this place that you know well. Another one that is very helpful is make a list in your head. Best if it's a list that's hard to complete. So this is one I've done myself. I've done 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the other one I do a lot is make a list. So make a list of things that you know well and just go through it so you can get grounded in that concept. What I like to do is starships. I like to go through my favorite starships and kind of rank them in my head, the different class of starships. Constitution class, Constellation class, Excelsior class, Galaxy class, Nebula class. Going through and kind of ranking what are my favorite ones. And then if I run out of Federation starships, I can really challenge myself and go into Klingon and Romulan and like all these other classes. If I get to Kazon, I'm really in a tough place. If I've been going that long, someone come help me. But or you can make a list of your favorite episodes. You can make a list of your favorite characters, your favorite aliens. You can always have this as a go-to strategy when you need to get grounded. So those are my skills. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Make a mental map. Make a list. These things can really help you when you need it. Larry, let's open up this whole hailing frequencies. You've been going through the comments. I've been going through the comments. So let's highlight some of our favorites here.
Well, you've got your finger on the button there. I don't, but guys, everybody's been. I think this is really. I don't know what it's been. I think we've had more people visiting today. I think people telling stories. People are throwing out our episodes was our original thing. A lot of people have had episodes that was on my list that we didn't pull images from. We can't do that. But yeah. You go with something.
Yeah, I just want to highlight Zahir's. As a person with a disability, one of my favorite highlights was meeting LeVar Burton. Whoops, wrong one. I highlighted the wrong one. Zahir, let me bring you back here. Was meeting LeVar and sharing that Geordi showed me anything is possible in addition to reading Rainbow, of course. I just want to say, Zahir, one of my favorite things is being able to express gratitude to someone who helped create something that really helped me. And gratitude is the super emotion that not only helps you to feel better, it also helps the person receiving that grateful comment, and it helps everyone else there who's able to witness it, as we just were now with you sharing this comment. So thank you for sharing that comment.
Sorry, dead air. I'm just all caught up in. We've just had. Maybe it's my imagination. Maybe people are feeling a little more liberated. I don't know, but sometimes when you lay down the rules, it's kind of clarifying for everybody.
Well, let me ask.
A lot of con memories from people who are talking.
A lot of con memories. Scott is mentioning when I was growing up, all the big ones were in the Bay Area. I don't even think the big Anaheim ones started yet. Scott, did you go to the Star Trek convention in the San Jose Convention Center before Star Trek Generations came out, where the headliners, I think, were William Shatner one day, and then Leonard Nimoy the second day. Leonard Nimoy was on Sunday. I was at that convention. It was my very first convention. Were you there at the San Jose Convention Center Star Trek convention with Leonard Nimoy? Let me know. Where he was talking about Generations and why he didn't get involved in Generations. Let me know, because if you were there, I was there. So we actually previously met in a very different era of the timeline.
Yeah, that was. It's really wild how we have these circles back. But I really thanks everybody for sharing your con stories. I think Libby shared one talking about meeting Majel right about the time when Gene's health was going down. Yeah, the nerdism. Wow, ship class. See, sometimes I'm not, when I'm in those things, I'll sit here and try to think about states, or I'll try to do the presidents in order, or I'll go to my history nerds sometimes before I go to my Trek nerd side, which is sad. I'm not trying to betray anybody. Please don't think I'm trying to betray.
You can be nerdy about multiple things.
Can I?
Yes.
Dr. Ali? Can I be more?
I give you full permission.
Does your freak flag come in more than one color? Okay. Yes.
Looks like Scott was not at that convention. Scott, we missed each other.
Oh, well.
Heidi says that she was having difficulty sleeping the other night and had tried making a top 3 character for each Star Trek show, and that was hard. So Heidi, that is a great example of grounding. My suggestion for the sleep is if you want to make a list thing in your sleep, make it something that might bore you or might relax you. Try not to make a list of something that might really activate you and agitate you, or just like wake you up. And it's a fine line there. Something that helps me when I'm trying to fall asleep is I listen to the white noise of the Enterprise D warp core. There's a great 12-hour long YouTube video that is just playing the warp core sound for 12 hours, and it soothes me to bed. Always helps me.
Yeah.
And they have one for Voyager. They have one for the.
Now we've become our own lower deck scene where we're all competing to do the sound.
Welcome to Larry and Ali's Star Trek ASMR videos.
I should point out here, give a shout out to Linda, who noticed that picture of the 100th episode cake. I was going to say this and I forgot. She's turned in profile, and it's right when Gates was very much pregnant with her son, who she was wearing the bigger and bigger robe all year long. But yeah, that was she had him over the hiatus time. Yeah, right. There you go. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
It's nice to see Worf smiling in that photo.
That wasn't Worf smiling. That was Michael smiling.
It was Michael smiling as Worf, but with his makeup still on, and Data very much too. That's a funny little
Data being server boy there with the cake plan. Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, hey, listen. Where are we on time? We're at overtime a little, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Because I did want to repeat that our panel. We should repeat the panel, and the link is in the chat, guys. And thanks to everybody who was throwing the different links that'll all get you there. So, if you go to get to my virtual booth at VTC, see it's a thing now, so it's VTC. Go to their page or my page, either one, virtualtrekkon.com, and I've got links at my page on my blog story and my event page, but get all the virtual booths in the virtual dealers room. There's 40, and Armin is promoting his book. You can go to his virtual Zoom room and talk to Armin about his book. A lot of people, podcasters and things, but come by and talk to me. Whatever you want to talk about. 5 o'clock tomorrow Pacific, and then 6:30 Monday evening is my booth. But our panel, again, is 8:45 a.m. Pacific, 11:45 a.m. Eastern, and we're having an active chat room, so we'll be leaning on you guys there, just like we do here. So,
yeah, it's going to be fun. The next thing Larry and I have to do is get that plan all ready to go, and it's going to be sort of our top 3 best examples of mental health in Star Trek, top 3 worst examples. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Ezri and Garrick.
I am giving myself some plexing just to get ready for the stress of talking about Ezri and Garrick. Oh gosh, this is really working, Larry. I think I'm good. I think we're done with Life Support Live.
Some kind of galactic consciousness. I was going to say, maybe you're having some galactic, mycelial fragmentary betazoid DNA there, because it's working for you.
I might. The mycelial network is everywhere.
It's betazoid. It's beta. Although she's telling Barclay to do it. Last I checked, Barclay was not betazoid.
Oh my gosh. Larry, this has been a really fun episode today. We've had a lot of fun.
Regenerating, yeah. There's been a lot of talking going on. I'm going to have to watch this show again and see all the...
There's so many great comments. The comments this weekend.
There's no rum in that Coke. Okay.
I am all out of my coffee. This usually doesn't happen. I always have a backup stash here to refill, and I am all out today. It's been a lot of fun. Hey folks, I have another new video on the Psych Show this week. I have a video all about mental illness as a therapist. You can check that out. And I also have last week's video, which is about how to make a coping first aid kit, an emotional coping first aid kit. If you want to learn more about these kind of skills that we talked about a little bit today, go over to the Psych Show on YouTube. You can check that out. And in addition to virtual TrekCon, Larry, how can people find more from you?
I was going to say, LarryNemecek.com is always the place. If you go over there, you'll see the button to get here. 5th anniversary, my God, of Portal 47 is coming up. We always have a big open house, the big guest. I'm moving very closer to be able to announce the guest. It's coming late, but it'll be awesome one way or the other. But go over right now, LarryNemecek.com, click on this, get your name in, get reserved. We'll have some door prizes and all that if you're in on the thing. But that's coming up even after this crazy weekend at Virtual TrekCon happens. That's in 10 days, the end of the month.
Yes, and we got the confusing music, as Cairo says, and the sad music, as Libby says. But folks,
I don't know what's happening.
You're getting a lot of bonus content this week. We have Virtual TrekCon going on. We have our panel on Monday. We're going to be announcing the Star Trek First Contact Slumber Party, when that's going to happen. There's a lot of good things to look forward to, and we've got another episode of Star Trek Discovery coming our way. We have new Star Trek for so long, for so many weeks, folks.
A few weeks, 12 more.
This has been a ton of fun, Larry. I really enjoyed this week's episode. It was so great hanging out with you. I cannot wait to do it again in 2 days, and then again next Saturday.
At 8:45 in the morning, yeah.
At 8:45. Folks, live long and prosper.
Hey everybody, Trek well.